when you actually have God above everything else, it's hard to talk about the basic things that you have to talk about in a marriage. Like, what are you to do with your finances? How are you going to spend your time? We don't have kids yet, but how will you raise your kids? Where will you send them to school? Where will you live? Who will you hang out with?
Yeah.
What will you say yes to? What will you say no to? What kind of life path will you go on together? And if one person is all in for God and one person's kind of not, it's going to be, again, very two different. You're going to cross wires. So I think the whole point of this is like just getting kind of going back to what you do for your full-time profession when you're not on sabbatical is you have coaching and you have these courses to help women find their spouse and have a godly relationship because we know the power of it. Like you and I have both been in relationships where you just said it, but we're in, dating somebody that isn't a Christian and it works for a little bit, but you have to put a lot of band-aids on to make it work.
Yeah.
So
What do you feel like when you dated someone who wasn't on fire for Jesus? What do you feel like was the hardest part about that?
what was the hardest part about dating somebody that wasn't a Christian? I think just the like planning out your future and your vision, like just having different visions for life. Like my biggest desire, because before you and I dated, I had only been a Christian for a year or so, like back
Yeah.
saved again, born
Right.
again.
Because you were Catholic
I was
growing up,
Catholic, yeah,
which some Catholics are very devout in their faith,
yeah. But for me,
but for you, you were not.
so I think for me it was when I was starting to talk about the future with them. Like faith was a very big part of that conversation, and it wasn't for them. So it was like I want Jesus to be the top priority in my life, and I be honest, like it wasn't there because I was still working through stuff. But when I would talk to them, it would be like, "What? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense."
Yeah.
How about you?
I think like for me, it's, I was raised in a Christian home. My dad was like a pastor for college students. So I would consider myself a Christian my whole life. I mean, I got baptized when I was like 12 or 13. I gave my life to Jesus like 15 times growing up because I literally like kept thinking I like hadn't done it well enough. So like every year at church camp, I would like raise my hand and like rededicate my life to Jesus. And I didn't know I could like, that I had already done it, and I was just about like walking
Yeah.
it out at that point. But I had a lot of years where even though I believed in Jesus, I believed that Jesus was the Son of God. I believed he died on the cross for my sins. So yes, I would consider myself a Christian, but I wasn't really living it out. I was partying a lot. I was, uh, you know, talking to a lot of guys and doing stuff with different guys, and yeah, I just was not living out like my faith, and I wasn't, I guess, purity in numerous standpoints. I don't even just mean like sexual purity. I just feel like I was really off track. So all that goes to say, during that time, a lot of times I'd still go to church. That's like what was hard. Is like I'd be going to church, maybe somewhat sporadically, sometimes more often than not. But I was still like partying really hard on the weekends, still like seeking a lot of validation from men.
Mm,
And it was kind of weird because it was like I really did believe in Jesus. I really did consider myself a Christian, but when I looked at my life didn't really look all too differently from people around me who were not Christians. And all that goes to say, so when I would date guys, I knew I wanted to marry a Christian, but I think I had this belief that was like most Christian guys are like super lame and not cool. So I think I was like, and I've shared this before, but I had this belief I could either marry a Christian guy who was like really nerdy and really probably like not very attractive and probably like extremely basic. Like we probably couldn't even go out and get drinks together, but at least he loves Jesus. Or I thought he's going to be like really hot and we'll be like best friends, and like we'll have all this chemistry, but he won't be a Christian.
mm,
And I did date those two different guys a lot of times because I had that belief. And I hear women all the time, Christian women, saying, I don't think there's any hot Christian guys. I don't think there's any good looking Christian guys and stuff. And that's just, it's not true. There's hot Christian guys out there. There's hot non-Christian guys out there. Like there's, you know, nerdier non-Christian guys. There's nerdier Christian guys. Like, so
whatever you like.
Yeah. Whatever you like, whatever your thing, or, you know, like maybe you'll get someone who's a little bit nerdy, but also really hot like I did.
Am I nerdy? I'm not nerdy.
A little bit.
I'm dorky.
Dorky. That's a
Not nerdy.
Yeah. You're not nerdy. You're dorky. Good point.
I don't like computers.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think when I think of your Patagonia outfits, I think that's like kind of nerdy, but dorky is a much, much better word.
I think that's just your perception. It's very cool in Denver.
True. Anyway, I digress on that, but all this goes to say, that is a limiting belief. When I try to date guys, because I dated those two different type of guys, there we go. I dated those two different type of guys, and a lot of times I would tend more towards the type of guy who was hot, chemistry, we have this great time together, but he's not a Christian, or maybe he goes to church, like he's a creaster. Those are like the Christians that go on Christmas and Easter. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now I can get him like plugged into the church and he can start coming to Bible study with me and like that kind of stuff. And it just never went well for me. And I don't recommend it because it's not really fair to either party. Actually, when it comes down to it, it's kind of unfair for both because I'm wanting to change him and hoping he becomes a Christian. And even though, yes, I do believe that's the best for him, no one really wants to be changed. It doesn't feel good. Like the guys that I was dating, ultimately, I think felt very rejected by me because they were basically like, kind of like this movie. They were kind of like, so the only way you could really see a future with me is if I become like a Christian. But what if I don't become a Christian? Then you don't love me? And I'd be like, well, I do love you. But I do want to end up with a Christian because I want to believe the same beliefs that my husband does. And I want us to be able to read the Bible together. I want us to be able to praise Jesus together. I want us to go to church together. And they're like, well, what if I don't ever want to do any of those things? Am I enough for you? And that's like painful for them, you know, like that's not cool. Like, so it ended up just not being fair for either party ultimately.
Yeah.